Welcome back to the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. Jackson, I think we might as well rename this potentially the Cleveland Guardians podcast because today's guest, Cade Smith, follows Eric Sabrowski, who followed Jacob Zibin.
They just keep popping up, Matt. It's crazy. Cleveland has such an affinity for Canadian arms, Canadian players, of course, the Nailers as well. So, yeah, what a treat to be able to get another Guardian, Cade Smith, and he's had a hell of a season. He's got a hell of a career ahead of him. So, looking forward to this one.
We're thrilled to be joined today by Cleveland Guardians reliever Cade Smith. Cade, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, but I want to obviously get into this past year because it's a huge year for you and Canadian baseball fans watching you. But before I do, I got to go back to your college days. You went to the University of Hawaii. What's baseball and life in Hawaii like?
Yeah, that was the reason I went out there was it was somewhere you could be out on the field year round. It's not something that I was able to grow up with, so it's something I was looking for in college. But I had a blast out there. Like the stadium was beautiful. The university is the biggest show on the island, so people are going to watch baseball games. They're coming to watch on campus, and so we get some pretty solid crowds on the weekends, and fans were into it. It was a great atmosphere. The campus was beautiful. We got to get around the island and see some of the beaches too. So it was really really fortunate to go spend that amount of time there, and really had a lot of fun. I enjoyed my classes, all that. Like there's a lot of really good memories from that time.
What's obviously being a West Coast guy, I'm sure helps, but what was the recruitment process like? How did they identify you and how did you kind of end up making the decision?
The coach saw me for the first time at the Tournament 12 in Toronto. I pitched there, and he was there actually for the game. And then I was fortunate to have one of my high school teammates was actually already at that school, and so he had my number and was basically kind of able to say, hey, Hawaii wants to reach out, and then we got in touch, and I went out for a visit and saw the campus and all that stuff. So had to go east to Ontario before going all the way west and more back to Hawaii. So
Was that Carter Lawn?
yeah,
Yeah, good memories. Yeah, I covered a lot of college baseball, so I give
yep,
myself a pat on the back for that one.
yeah.
What's the travel like college-wise? Like that's got to be pretty crazy travel for road trips.
Yeah, everyone thinks that the travel would be nightmarish, but honestly, it wasn't that difficult. Basically, pre-conference, everybody would come to you because a lot of schools are still snowed in. Over spring break, the coach is real good at scheduling one big trip. You go play a big name school. So we played LSU my freshman year, Ohio State the second year, and then we went to Vanderbilt my third year. And then other than that, all your pre-conference games are at home. Everyone comes to you. Once conference starts, all the teams are in California. So basically, kind of every other week you're in California. One of those trips is 2 weeks long, and you kind of leave on Wednesday, get back on Monday, kind of thing. And so it wasn't that bad. There's only I think like 6 trips in a season, and so a lot of the professors were super understanding. You just have to make sure you scheduled your labs on the right day so that you would be able to hit them whether you were coming back from a road trip or leaving for a road trip. And other than that, it was they're super flexible and accommodating. So the travel wasn't that bad.
What did you major in?
Biology.
I'm asking that because I'm going to ask you something later about that.
Yeah.
So, but kind of in that time frame, you were part of that COVID draft, that five round draft. Didn't get selected, signed as a free agent with the Guardians.
Yep.
What was that whole time like? And a 5 round draft, that's got to be kind of disappointing to kind of go through the process at that time.
Yeah, no, it was a really weird scenario because not only was it 5 rounds, but then they also capped the amount that they could sign guys for. And so I was, through 3 years of my degree, kind of faced with the decision, okay, I didn't get drafted. That would have been a no-brainer for me to go. And now I have to decide if I'm going to drop out of college and give this a shot or if I'm going to stay in school. And so what it came down to was that you can always go back to school. You can't always have this opportunity to go play. So I decided to do that. And then also coupled with the fact that, my schoolwork was becoming such basically, burden. Like the time commitment for it was just, extraordinary, and homework was picking up. And so I was kind of at the most I could handle. And so I decided that like, all right, start to try and focus on one, and then you can come back for school if you need to later. And so dropped out, signed electronically with Cleveland because they're renowned for the pitching development, and they also didn't sign that many free agents. There was a couple other teams who we were in discussion with, and they signed a dozen right-handed pitchers. And so the fact that Cleveland is known for their development, and second of all that they were very selective with the amount of guys that they signed in addition to who they draft was a really, really good combination. And so then for that, from 2020 in June when I signed until early April 2021, I was just in my parents' basement, like lifting weights, like running my sprints down in the fields random, like outside here, and thrown into a chain link fence. And like, that's all that we had access to because everything was still closed.
It's kind of crazy to go from that to what happened this past year, which we're obviously going to get into. But so you mentioned signing with Cleveland because of the pitching development. Take us through that a little bit. What is it specifically that kind of stood out to you at the time? And now that you've been in the system and with the big league team, what is it that impresses you so much?
Yeah. So at the time, I had anecdotal evidence that like my fastball was good and there's something about it. But they were the ones who actually kind of came to me with some of the numbers from a couple of my outings in college and said like, hey, this is something that's really unique about your fastball. Like we actually really think it's, metrically unique. And they had some thoughts too on like my split changeup that I was playing around with. And so for them to actually have like basically a clearly defined thing, a clearly defined strength, right? They identified that for me, and then it seemed like that was something that I'd never really heard of it. I didn't know, like I knew kind of maybe the concept of it or something, but like they were able to actually be quantitative about it and like here's major league comparisons and stuff like that, and then also have that they're very forward with the mindset like it is going to be individual strengths and programs and like individual development. And it's not going to be a cookie cutter, just stamp guys out. It's going to be what's unique about the way that your strengths are and how do we build your strengths and then also build out the other aspects that are, underdeveloped right now to complement that. So that was the thing that really, really appealed to me. And then getting into the org and being in it now for, 4 years, seeing how like there's a lot of communication between domains and there's nobody who I've encountered who is so arrogant as to pretend to have all the answers. Like people are very understanding of where their expertise runs into overlap with another expertise, and then they're very clear with like, hey, like I'm going to touch in with the strength and conditioning group on this. I'm going to check with medical about this question. I'm going to go refer to the biomechanics, and then also we're going to get strength people on board, and they have all these different domains come together to try and answer these questions that I had. And so seeing that like kind of attitude for development is, I think, a really special thing.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that because I haven't heard anyone explain it that way. But you see some teams that have all these coaches and all these front office stuff, and you kind of wonder how it meshes and works, and do people butt heads? And it seems like in Cleveland, it's pretty, it's a pretty fluid process.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody butt heads. And then the other thing is too is that like there may be some kind of slightly different variations on approaches, and it just comes down to like regardless of what anyone is saying and the information they're presenting because of the questions I'm asking, it comes down to how does that integrate with myself, right? Like there's and nobody throws the same way. Everyone's body is structured differently. So there's been that huge learning process of I'm trying to learn what is specific to me and what is individual to me. And so I'm willing to hear what people have to say and to try it or to think about it and consider it. And if I like it and it works, like I'll fit it in and I'll make adjustments to incorporate it. And if it doesn't, that's fine because there's people who move differently. Like there's guys who are way more flexible than me and they're going to throw the ball differently than I am. And then there's guys who are way stronger and have different lengths and ratios of their torso and their legs and their arms. And nothing is cookie cutter between guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the development worked because in March 30th you made your big league debut.
Mhm.
Let's go back to that time right before you got called up. How did you find out that you were going to the big leagues and what was that? What was your reaction when you found out?
So through spring training, I had a good spring training, and when it was getting close to that time to name the roster, they called me in and they were very transparent with me, and they treated me like a man, and they said, "This is the truth. Like you've had a good spring training, you put yourself in a good position to make the team. but we can't guarantee the spot. If we make an external addition, that might take your spot. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, you're going to travel with the team. And so it was kind of like that limbo, whereas like I could be on the team, I could not be. Like, so I didn't have a definite answer, not even until like, we got to Oakland and my family actually flew in and they were able to come there. It was the first time I saw them in over a year. And then basically it was like right before opening day where it was like, hey, like we're activating you. We haven't made any external additions. Like you're on the roster. And so it's funny because when that was announced, my family, we were hanging out in the hotel and we were just playing cards. And so my dad sees that it was announced or whatever. And so then it's like, can we celebrate now? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And then it was like, all right, we're back to playing cards. Like that's so I don't think I was, anxious about it or anything because it wasn't something I could control. But yeah, it was a little bit of a interesting kind of waiting time. But again, like I really respect the fact that they were just, straightforward with me.
For sure. Who won the game of cards? Do you remember?
I I don't even know. I think that there was a couple other more exciting things going on that day.
I would say so. So you make your big league debut. What's it like running in to the mound in your first game in the major leagues?
Mhm. I think that the running into the mound didn't seem like anything was too different. Like, it was in Oakland. There was, I think, probably close to 15,000 people there, but it didn't feel too different from a spring training atmosphere. So it wasn't until I was walking off the mound after my first inning that I saw my family kind of above the dugout going nuts, and then I was like, okay, this is actually something different. This is something special. So, and then I went out for another inning, and again, my family was going nuts. So yeah, it didn't feel too different from spring training, but again, like regardless of the atmosphere, I just want it to be relaxed and calm and try and treat it no different than how I had been treating spring training so that I could just continue to focus on like what I do well.
Time now for a mound visit, courtesy of the Baseball Zone. Today, Coach Sean Schaefer discusses how player development has changed since he started coaching.
I think the biggest thing is there's so much more information that is accessible to the public through social media. With that, though, there becomes the problem of what's good and what's bad for each individual player. So you can go down those rabbit holes of just finding so much information and can be a little bit overwhelming. So as much as that information is given to us, I think one of the things we have to do is take a step back and understand what's best for that individual player. And that's the probably biggest part of coaching, and the most difficult part of coaching is finding out what works for what player and what doesn't work for that same player.
This has been a mound visit courtesy of the Baseball Zone. Now back to the action.
As the season went on in the early phases, we had Eric Zabrowski on a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of asked him a little bit about guys that maybe took him under his wing when he first got there. And he mentioned you and Eli Morgan. Did anybody for you kind of really help you settle into that bullpen?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of the culture in the bullpen this year. It was such a special group of guys, so much fun to be there and to observe how the inside jokes develop and kind of that it becomes its own culture within the bullpen, but then also the shared attitude of just like all hands are on deck, like however you can help the team win. And so there was, Nick Sandlin was significant in being there and kind of showing me what my responsibilities are and how kind of things work. And seeing Sam Hench's same thing. And so then there's the other two young guys would be Tim Herron and Hunter Gaddis. And so I stuck close to them because they had been there before and they knew kind of where to go and whatnot. But no, it was really cool to watch the veterans and how they do things and see how well they've developed their routines and stick to them and just kind of, file that into the back of my mind of they know what they need and they get it done every day, regardless of the situation. And so that kind of attitude is something that I think is really admirable, is that consistency.
Zabrowski mentioned that you were a little happy to pass on the bullpen backpack. Can you confirm that to him?
I can confirm that because I carried that thing around until is it August that he came up? So that was like a good 4 months, and that thing is not light. So,
Yeah, that's a long time to be calling the
but
back.
you gotta give him a hard time because then Andrew Walters came up like 2.5 weeks, and then he passed it on to him, and so he didn't
He
even
got
get the
off
brunt.
easy.
Yeah,
See, he didn't mention
exactly.
that part. He just mentioned
No,
the
of course
fact that
not.
you're so happy to give it to him. So as you settled in the big leagues, did you have kind of like a welcome to the big leagues moment where you kind of sat back and realized like, holy smokes, like I'm living my dream right now?
Well, my wife and I never took it for granted that we were going to make the team, and we never even and when that happened, we never took it for granted that we were going to stay. So we really kind of had that mentality throughout the entire year that like, I mean, it's been great, but they could send us down at any point, and that's completely their right to do so. So we didn't have like a revelation of like we now identify ourselves as big leaguers and we're going to stay forever. Like we've not had that mentality, and I still don't have that mentality. Like you got to earn your spot, and then once you've earned it, you have to fight to keep it. You have to continue to perform to keep it. Um, but I think that probably like being on some of those stadiums and on some of those fields was eye-opening for sure. Because the first three stadiums we played at, Oakland, and then Seattle, and then Minnesota, were all stadiums that I had seen games at before. And so it was coming to a stadium that's familiar, and yet this time like I'm in the clubhouse and the weight room, and then going out and onto the field. And so I think that was a very different experience. You don't have to go clamber for parking outside Safeco Field. It's like the bus is coming right up underneath now T-Mobile Park, right?
You're not grabbing a hot dog on the street as you're walking with all your bags.
Exactly. No garlic fries, no burger. It's just work.
Favorite big league stadium you played in, since we're talking about stadiums, is there one that kind of stands out that kind of your favorite? We'll take out Progressive for the
Yeah.
sake of this conversation.
It's fun to see the differences between stadiums. I think like Seattle's just like there's a lot of nostalgia there going to games with my family, and so that was really cool to be there. Um, and like I wouldn't consider myself much of a history guy, but when you actually get to like Fenway and see kind of there's something just special about being there. Like it's you really have to be there to understand it, but like just being in that atmosphere was incredible. So I think um that was probably very close to the top of the list. I also really enjoyed Atlanta. Like it was beautiful and warm when we were there too, and that was also kind of early in the year, and so it was a nice change. But um, yeah, definitely, I think Fenway was very high up there, and but like, yeah, man, it was so much fun to just see the different cities and stadiums and atmospheres in there, and yeah.
Yeah, so you developed into a key reliever for them for Cleveland through over the course of the year, pitching in big spots in the playoffs. What did it mean to you as a rookie to be able to gain the trust of Stephen Vogt and kind of be put in those big situations?
Yeah, again, like it goes back to, my wife and I having no expectation that we would make break with the team, no expectation that we would stay there, and then no expectation that we'd be used in those kind of situations. And so, um, basically, like I tried to keep my focus pretty small and just really focus on what I can do each day to improve and to learn and to get better and um, not get wrapped up in the things that I can't control. And so um, getting down like the last you know as the season wound down and into the playoffs, it was just what can I do to make sure that I'm ready when they call, never caught off guard, to be able to leave everything on the field and compete as best I can to help the team be in a situation to win. And so, I don't treat the trust and the confidence they have in me lightly. Like I'm not going to take it for granted that I'm going to have success every time I go out there because there's no guarantees, right? And um, so I mean, I was still like, regardless of the outcome, learn what you can, forget about it, look towards the next day, and how can you improve? How can you get better? How can you do whatever you can to help the team to win? So
Speaking of not getting caught off guard, I'm sure that a lot of that has to do with preparation. What is a day in the life of Cade Smith, a game day in the life of Cade Smith like? Take us through your preparation, how you get ready for the game, and leading up to your appearance.
Sure. So when we get to the field, basically change and go straight to the weight room. And if I have to lift, I'll do that. If not, it'll be just the prep routines that I have to get my body loose. Then we'll head out to the actual field. We'll do the bands and weighted balls and our throwing program. Then we'll have some running. If they're hitting BP, we'll shag BP. If not, we'll head in after BP or after we're done throwing. We'll just be in the clubhouse, shower, eat, kind of just give your mind a break to settle and just kind of relax for a little bit. And then it'll be change, get ready, head out for the anthem. Then we head down to the bullpen. And from there, you watch the game and you kind of get a sense for it, or when you need to start moving around, and you do what you can there, which is usually just like getting the legs loose, doing the bands, doing weighted balls again, and then making sure you're ready if they call.
Did anything surprise you about the season and being in the big leagues? Obviously, you've had long seasons in the minor leagues, so the length may not necessarily be surprising, but there's anything that kind of wasn't what you expected?
I think it was super fast paced, right? Like getting used to the minor league schedule of 6 days, 6 games in 6 days, off day, you travel, and then it's like another 6 games, off day. So it was way more regular and a little bit slower pace. And this is like 3-4 days in one city, you're flying in the next city, 3-4 days there, on to the next. Like it's a much faster pace, but like they do such a good job of making the travel convenient for us. So that was cool to see the behind the scenes of how they get that done. But things that like surprised me, I think I just really got a sense of the fact that like for the bullpen specifically, everybody has elite pitches and elite stuff, right? You take that for granted because it's a prerequisite for being there. And so the thing that helps you stay and the thing that separates the guys who have short careers versus long careers is how well they execute and how well they command their pitches. And so seeing that like that is the most important thing. Like I think for the sake of longevity, the way that I understand it is that's the most important thing. So I think there was a bit of a newfound, we'll say like blossoming appreciation for execution over the course of this year.
Yeah, so I'm going off track here. I got notes here, and then you're saying things, and I have other questions. So give listeners kind of a behind the scenes of what those accommodations are like. What are those flights like? What's it like traveling with the big league team?
Yeah, like I said, it's convenient. It's after the game, you'll eat, get on the bus, they'll take you to the airport. You get on the plane goes to the next airport, and then you get off the plane onto the bus and straight to the hotel. Like it's very straightforward and convenient in that sense.
So you got to share a bullpen, obviously, with Eric Zabrowski at the end of the year. What did it mean to have another Canadian in the bullpen, or is that something that you don't really think about? That's just something guys like me think about when I'm watching.
Well, it was really cool because we heard from Scott Crawford with the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum that when we went and played in Toronto, we had the first MLB game ever where 5 Canadians played. Because there was Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Zach Pop on Toronto, and then there was both the Naylor brothers and me on Cleveland. And so that was cool to be part of the 5 Canadians. And then by the end of the year, we had Zabrowski. So it's like, great, we have 4 Canadians on a single team. Like that's incredible. And there's a couple more Canadians who are coming up through our system, and it's like it seems like we get 1 or 2 every single year. And so it's really cool to see, baseball in Canada continuing to produce talent and like seeing, hey, we can do this, we can compete. Like this is just something that's, growing, you hope, and you see like hopefully there's unlimited potential for Canada to continue to develop young players. So it was really cool to see that.
So I asked you about your major earlier, biology. The reason I asked you is Eric Zabrowski mentioned how when he was going through his 2 Tommy Johns, he thought about being a social studies teacher, which I had never heard a professional baseball player say before. If you weren't playing baseball, what were you hoping to go into as a profession?
Well, I was on the pre-med track in college, But then, you know, first of all, it's like it would be like another 12 years of school or something. It'd be crazy. So that's not going to happen. But I mean, that was kind of the only idea I had coming out of high school. The plan was like, all right, if baseball doesn't work out, and I'm getting a degree in biology because I find it interesting, even though it's challenging. Like maybe along the way, I'll find something that like I'm really good at and is also really interesting, and I'll run with that. And so I didn't have anything super specific. I was pretty open to um, learning kind of new things or seeing what fields would really pique my interest. And so, um, yeah, that's kind of the approach I had going into college.
So hopefully you have a long big league career. Yeah, I can see why 12 years of education after that. I don't know if you want to be like a 55-year-old doctor for first year doctor. So
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, people might trust you a little more because they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy's old. He's been doing it for years." And it's like, "Hey, you're my first client, first patient." It's like, I'll go see somebody else.
yeah, that might be a little bit of a deterrent for people. So my last question I have to ask Canadian Baseball Network podcast, I asked Eric about this. The World Baseball Classic, Canada could have quite the bullpen. Is that something that you've thought about and would consider if given the opportunity?
Yeah, I would love to do that again. I mean, I think it was a ton of fun to do that in 2023. Like a phenomenal experience to be in those atmospheres and to play against USA and Mexico and see what those kind of atmospheres and fan bases are like, and also to see like the different guys in the bullpen. Like I had a lot of really good conversations with the guys who were in the bullpen who had been in like three WBC tournaments and they had been doing this for years. And the amount of kind of experience and wisdom they had uh, from that was super, super valuable. And I had an absolute blast in that environment, and I'd love to be in that environment again.
Is it any different do you think it would be any different preparing for a tournament like that from the minor league side, like you did the first time, to being a big leaguer? Because sometimes you see guys opt out and choose not to participate, and you're not really sure why. There's obviously reasons, but do you think it would be different preparing for it where you are now?
I'm not sure if it would be different. I think that maybe the first difference that comes to mind is that like there'd probably be a little bit more of an expectation for you to produce, like um, kind of being a free agent sign and coming up through the minor leagues, not being a prospect, a big name prospect, high bonus signing or anything like that. I got to be to play into that underdog role a little bit where I'm like, no one cares. No one expects me to succeed. There's no pressure. Like what do I have to lose? I get to go out and play. And so that's something that I enjoy is that like I just get to play. I don't have to worry about people, you know, coming in to critique and judge me and say that I'm failing expectation, letting them down and stuff like that. So I think that's probably the only thing I could think of is that they might, expect you to be absolutely lights out and perfect and whatever, but
Yeah, I hate to tell you, but there definitely will be expectation.
that's fine.
Which I think you're fine with. You pitched on some of the biggest stages. So, Cade, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time and best of luck this season.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Just another great guest, Jackson, another big leaguer, and just a down-to-earth guy. And just you can tell he was really intelligent, really confident in himself.
Yeah, it's a real treat, Matt. We've been very privileged to now interview a number of whether it's prospects or big leaguers, and yeah, Cage just really comes across as a really down to earth, really smart guy. He really gets it. One thing I noticed, he didn't really build anything up to be too much bigger than it needs to be, and I think that that's a good message in baseball and life in general. And I think that there's a reason he's had so much success. The whole thing of signing with Cleveland because they didn't have a lot of other signings and they developed pitching so well. It's so matter of fact, but it makes so much sense, doesn't it, Matt? What a brilliant decision that's paid off for him.
There's always kind of outside impressions of organizations of what they're like, and Cleveland's one that great development, great pitching development, and then when you finally talk to guys on the inside like we have, whether it's Smith, Sabrowski, Jacob Zibin, you kind of see they kind of pull back the curtain for you and kind of show you that yeah, this is a really good organization, and to see so many Canadians go there is a really good thing.
Yeah, they sound like they're very grateful and thankful to be there, right? Like It's like when you're in an office job, you've been in one office, you go to another, and they do things in such a better way, and you're like, I never knew things could be this good, right? I know I've experienced things like that. I think that that's something that you'd really kind of take a lot of pride in, to be part of that team. That team wants you to be part of them. We've
Yeah.
heard that with Sabrowski, and we heard a little bit with him. Like there's that two-way street that happens when there's that mutual respect.
And just to never take anything for granted. You never assumed he was going to be on the team. He was always, it's a constant process of getting better and making sure that you're proving yourself. He was one of their best relievers at the end of the year, and he still has that mindset. So it's so impressive to see someone that's always striving to be better and never, assuming their spot on a team or assuming they're going to be this or that.
You look at the kind of the what's next for Cade, like wow, like what an opportunity now, right? Like coming off a great year, he's still young, like he's in a great organization, he's got a great opportunity, and now he can just run with it. So we're also, I think, really happy for him too at the same time. Like what an opportunity he's found himself in. He's been able to run with it because he didn't take things for granted, Matt, as you said, and what a position he's found himself in now.
Yeah, I think that could be a future big league closer right there. Obviously was pitching high leverage situations this year, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him go forward. And, we appreciate him coming on, and we hope our listeners enjoyed that conversation as well. We have a lot coming up in the new year, so there's some big things happening, so make sure to stay tuned.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out Canadian Baseball Network for extensive and comprehensive coverage of the latest in Canadian baseball. And The Baseball Zone, Canada's leading instructional baseball academy and training home to thousands of MLB pro, college, and youth baseball players.